Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Good evening, everyone. Good morning if there's anyone in Brazil, or good evening if there's anyone at home. I would like to invite you to get a bit closer, whoever is a bit more far away, so we actually have a proper circle here. And because tonight we are going to talk about Allan Kardec. I decided to try to use one of his, try to replicate one of his patient that was to try to be innovating, to try to actually encourage us to learn in different ways, encourage us to not just be part of a lecture, and to just not be listening and actually not be participating a bit more actively on that day. So I would like to start actually asking who was Allan Kardec, to try to describe him or his work or who he was in a word. And if anyone talks with me, I might just invite the volunteers here.
Pointing volunteers.
Oh, full point. I don't like this technique though. I feel that is a bit more aggressive.
The French guy.
French, yeah, he was a French man. Well done. We can go like that.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Scientist, yeah.
Teacher.
Teacher.
Methodical.
Sorry.
He was very methodical.
Methodical.
Researcher.
Curious researcher. Awesome. Anything else about him?
He was a big believer.
Yeah. So he started to question a lot of things that was happening on that age in France. If we reflected about it, about the religion, about the influence of the Catholicism on that age, and question about the education methods that were using in that age too. Please raise your hands whoever watched the movie on Kardec, so I can have an idea. Okay, awesome. So majority of you. Okay. It does illustrate a bit in a more like an entertainment way his history. So it is a good idea to watch if you feel a bit curious about what we are going to discuss tonight.
The book is better.
The book is better. Book is better, and yeah, and if you always reflected about that, whatever book you have read, and you watch the movie after, you are like, oh, but it didn't speak about that, or didn't show this, and then we start criticizing a bit, and that's okay. But it does reflect quite like a lot of truth, I believe so. And between a lot of people that study about spiritism, there was kind of like a common ground, a common agreement that it does bring a lot of good information for people that doesn't have any idea. And it's much easier sometimes to watch a video, to watch a movie, than actually be reading a book at night or in another time. Yeah, sorry, you're going to talk to me.
Which book is
There was just one about Allan Kardec, but there was a few different ones. There was a few.
But that one is the latest one.
Yeah.
That's the one that the movie was based on.
Yeah.
Kardec, just Kardec.
There is a
Marcel Sotomayor.
Marcel Sotomayor.
there's a few books, so I print out some references. So whoever wants to have a look in a few more things, I will give it to you at the end. And I also print out a summary of his biography, because I feel like there are people that really love to know very specific details about or history or where he was born and things like that, which I found particularly a bit boring. But I print out for whoever likes to know more about that thing. So we started with it answering the question who. So who was Allan Kardec? He was born on the 3rd of October of 1804, and his baptism name, I won't be able to pronounce it in French. I tried to search and I didn't succeed with the pronunciation. So just try to say the name as it is, as I understand. Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail. So we can maybe think about the last word, Rivail, and we focus on that name. That was his name as he was born, baptism name. He was born in a traditional Catholic family. So that was what he learned on that age, and that was what was predominant on that time. Even though he was born in that family, he started questioning about the Catholic religion quite earlier on. So he didn't actually acknowledge himself as practicing the Catholic, for example, religion. And this was of the 19th century. At age 12, he has concluded his studies. So think about school, high school nowadays. Think about at age 12. What were you all doing at age 12? I believe so. I was still playing with Barbies and kind of having fun at home, not doing anything to help my parents. I don't believe doing anything serious or finishing school at age 12. So he finished school at age 12. This was at Lyon. I'm not too sure how to pronounce it, but if you look at France, well, Lyon was a bit closer to Switzerland and Italy. So a bit more like north, south, east. I'm terrible with geography. You learned so much about my qualities tonight. No. Yeah. So he moved from Lyon. He went to study at a famous researcher named Henri Pestalozzi or Henri Pestalozzi. So Pestalozzi would be the famous pronunciation in English that we heard about it. And Pestalozzi, if you study about him, he was very famous about a holistic approach for education that now we know a lot of schools, they use this holistic approach that is considering the connection between the head, our hearts, and our hands to learn things. So instead of being like just listening as we are now, but how kids can actually explore, how kids can actually feel, and how kids can actually learn, comparing something that they already know, so some previous experiences. So I found that so interesting because that changes a lot of the most common way that education was made at that time, was taught at that time. So Allan Kardec was studying with this famous professor, and he got a lot of experience from that. So in summary, at the age 14, so jumping from 12 to 14, he was already teaching his peers, so his other kind of studies, friends that were studying together. So he was already teaching on that age, peers that were in the same kind of year or the same level of education as he was. So just to give it a bit more information about that school, the Pestalozzi motto was learning by head, hand, and heart. And this was very new for that age. And if you think about right now, still as parents, there's still a lot of parents that wouldn't be using that technique to encourage their kids to learn. And how important is this connection? just making a brief comment about today. I was actually in a therapy group, and we are discussing about how we can memorize, how we can help our memory to actually learn more and actually improve our memory in a short term. And the exercise was using cards. So we are using lots of different cards with different colors, and we are creating a history about the cards to then memorize these the numbers or the shapes or whatever. And what I learned today that I think I didn't know was that the back of our brain is responsible more for our long-term memory, and the front of our brain more for our short-term memory. In simple words, that's not that scientific. And then easier ways to learn is to connect the new information with the old information. So that's why every now and then, if you want to remember something, the name of someone, you can try to connect with something that you already know, that you already learned before. So sometimes we make songs about it. Sometimes, and this is, you remind myself, these types of education or these types of techniques, that's what they're trying to do at that age. And the most beautiful thing is that they use actually education to help a lot of underprivileged children. And so a lot of kids with a lower socioeconomic status, they didn't have the chance to learn. Pestalozzi, he kind of built an institute to learn these kids. And Rivail, not yet Allan Kardec, also did the same. So he taught a lot of kids with lower socioeconomic status. If you look at the movie, I think there is a scene just at the beginning that he will be talking about that. Close your books, like he kind of throw the books on the floor and like, books don't serve for anything if it doesn't make you think, if it doesn't make you ask questions. What are you doing here? You're just reading the book and answering the questions like that. We actually have to start practicing the critical thinking, and that's what he was talking about at that age. Then he was studying, just to give you a summary, if you think your work is too hard, or if you think you have studied too much, he was just studying theology, astronomy, philosophy, several languages. He knew at least eight different languages. We do struggle with English, hey? He knew 8 languages. Basic concepts of medicine too. I kind of read different biographies, so I'm not too sure, but as far as I understood, he was doctor in medicine. He finished a PhD in medicine. But if anyone knows any other information, feel free to correct me here. Then he came back to France. So this was in Switzerland, in this school that he was learning, in this institute with Pestalozzi. He came back to France, and with a lot of experience, he started being an educator and a writer, then a bit more official. Opening his own school. So he opened the Technical Educational Institute in 1825 in Yverdon. 5 years later, he published a lot of books, and he was quite well known by his knowledge at that age. At age around 28, he married Amélie Gabrielle Boudet. So she was a distinguished teacher. She was a culture human for that age. She was a poet, she was a writer, and he met her at the institute. So this is important because a lot of his strength and a lot of support he had from his wife to be able to do what he did for the spiritual science. So I think a few people that studied the relationship between them, they actually describe it that these two spirits, these two souls, they were supposed to be together in that incarnation to actually help each other and bring a bigger purpose for that age. So that's kind of something beautiful if you think about it. That's not only, I don't know, because of love, but that's not only because it makes sense for them to be together, but there's also a bigger purpose of working together to help spread the message of the Spiritism at that age. So in 1854, at age 50, he was a well-respected professor and recognized writer and author. Okay, so this answered the question, who was Allan Kardec? And so what? What we are talking about here, well, we are all spirits, so we are all studying Spiritism. And when does everyone know or would like to guess or remember at the top of your head when Allan Kardec was first more connected or integrated, or he started to question about spiritism or spirits? Was it silence that Allan Kardec founded in the past?
The moving tables.
Yes.
Everybody was,
The turning tables.
Yeah.
You want to talk more
Turning.
about that? Turning? Yeah. So yeah, he had a friend, let's see the name of a friend, Mr. Fortier. He was a researcher of magnetism. And Mr. Fortier, Allan Kardec was invited a couple of times to watch this phenomena. There was the turning tables. And Allan Kardec was, no, like as a scientist, I don't want to see any
Magical tricks.
magical, yeah, thank you. Not I was going to use a bad word. He didn't want to see anything that was more like party, fun, or more like
Show.
this is a show or something that didn't make sense for him. But as his close friend insisted, I'm like, okay, I'll give it a chance. I'll give it a go. So pretty much, he went to a specific house of a medium, and in this house, I don't think I'll be able to see her name. If anyone would like to share the name of this medium that was there in that house, feel free. But it was an experienced medium at that time, and the meeting was quite serious. So there were 4 or 5 people around the table. There was some type of, I wouldn't call ritual, but there was an order of things to happen. And Allan Kardec, that was still Ribeiro at that time, let's call it Ribeiro, he just saw the table moving. So you can call it as jumping, or you can call it as moving or knocking. The table was moving. And he tried to identify multiple ways. He tried to figure out how this was happening. And he couldn't find an physical explanation for that. Even if you think about magnets, there was no magnets in the table. There was nothing under, above. He checked everything. And as a scientist, because the table was moving in a specific order, and the number of moving jumps was kind of signalizing a yes or a no. So 1 jump, yes, 2 jumps, no, for example, or the different letters of the alphabet, which kind of construct in a name and then in a phrase, and they're making sense. There was some message behind. So what Allan Kardec say was pretty much like this: there is an intelligence force behind. That's actually something smart kind of happening here. It cannot just be something physical. It cannot just be something that doesn't represent like exactly intelligent force. So even though these phenomena were for fun, this meeting was a bit more like private, or a bit more specific, and he took it a bit more serious. So what he said was, an intelligent effect must have an intelligent force as its cause. So he was deeply interested, and with a solid scientific and philosophical basis, he changes the course of the experience. So this was the moment that he started to study. And as a professor, as a teacher, as a scientist, as a person that really studied a lot, he actually decided to establish like a way. How can I make this? How can I prove this? What is happening here? How can I organize all this information and what is happening? It's important to know that there was many different mediums that were receiving communication from spirits and got in touch with Allan Kardec, or Allan Kardec got in touch with them later on. And these messages were kind of spread across the world, and of course was a bit closer to Allan Kardec at that stage, mostly in Europe. But if you think about other religions or other people that study about spirits, you can see similar messages all over the world happening at similar time. And that kind of just shows the nature of the spirits. just shows like that it is consistent. We are receiving kind of similar messages. So one night at these meeting tables, there was a spirit named Zephyrus that declared that Reveil was Reveil's protector. And he explained that in another life, Reveil has this name, Allan Kardec. And because Reveil was well known as professor, as teacher, he didn't want to have his name connected with all his previous work. So he actually would like to be a bit more like anonymous or just not connected with the same name. So that's why he used Allan Kardec when he started publishing books later on. So he was the compiler of Spiritism. So if you read about Allan Kardec, he's not Spiritism as itself. It's important to separate that. Spiritism, or the science that will be studying spirits, we are going to receive the message if Allan Kardec was there or not. What I guess these spirits were quite smart to choose a wise man is because he could, in a very methodological way, methodological way, he could actually ask all the questions and have all the answers to make it easier for all of us to understand. So imagine this man receiving piles and piles of books, multiple communication with spirits, and trying to make sense of all of this. This comes from different people that will come with different language, that will come with different intonations, phrases. A lot of different spirits participated on that. So what he pretty much did was to compile everything, organize everything. And at that age, there was not much, let's say there was not much previous contact with the spirits, even though that we know about famous kind of communications. We know about the sisters. There were famous mediums at that time. They were the Valdez family. So Julie and Caroline at ages 14 and 16. Even though there was a bit of knowledge about psychography, this was still pretty new at that time. So what he did was to combine all of this, to be connecting with all these different mediums. And there was a lot of opposition on that time. So if you think about it, how difficult was that for him? He pretty much asked around 1,000 questions for these spirits. And that's what we know and estimated, I would say, at that time. He reviewed around 50 psychography books from different mediums, different nationality, different backgrounds. And in 1857, Allan Kardec published his first book, that is the Spirits book. So if anyone is unsure about how to start studying, that will be the book that is kind of questions and answers and a bit more objective way of learning about Spiritism. And the first version kind of had like half of the question was the last version of the book has. And there was multiple revisions. So we still have to be mindful that it was a different language that was translated, a lot of different editions, but I strongly believe that the main message is there. And whatever we have it in our minds that we would like to receive some answer, it is important to try to open that book. The Gospel of Spiritism is a really good book to open when we want an answer about something. And 1 year later, just 1 year after, he actually founded the Parisian Society for Spiritist Studies. So it was kind of the first spiritual Spiritist society or Spiritist center. So this was kind of dedicated pretty much to study about Spiritists and to kind of increase the knowledge of this science of philosophy and religion at that time. His legacy is pretty much leaving us with at least the 5 basic books about Spiritism. He published at least 12 books in this area, but there is much more that you can find out, and the Spiritual Magazine. So before studying more about Spiritism, he had published many other books in a lot of different areas. So I guess what really makes a bit more clear for us, like why this happened on that time. I believe so, as France was changing a bit more with the, how do you call it, Protestant. As France was changing a bit more ideas about religion and the power of church, there was a lot of more like free will and freedom, knowledge and speech happening. It is believed that Europe was a bit more open to receive a new knowledge at that time, even though there was still a lot of resistance. So one of the famous acts of resistance that you see in the movie, I think it's called the Act of Barcelona. Barcelona. There was a lot of books pretty much intercepted, and they put all the books on fire because there was a big power at that time against this knowledge about spirits. So you can call that was more towards the Catholic knowledge and reference. But in summary, even though they burned a lot of books, it kind of brought up a lot of publicity because all the newspapers have like on the front of the page, the spirits books they were burned, they were intercepted, and a lot of people start talking about it, and it kind of brought much more publicity for spiritism at that time. So one of the curiosities, I guess, is actually knowing that Allan Kardec he didn't have an extensive mediumship at that time. So was a lot of communication, a lot of other mediums that received communication from these spirits that help him out through his journey. And his kind of mission, that what he would like to do is pretty much bring more knowledge, more evolution, more education with the heart, with our minds, and with the critical thinking. So even if you don't want to study much about spiritism, even if you don't want to read much about spirits, there's still a lot of his work that it's amazing how he brings new ideas about education at that time. And a lot of people say that if you have a kids that are at the kindergarten now, kind of have to say thank you for Allan Kardec and also his professor, Pestalozzi, because the kids wouldn't be in kindergarten or wouldn't be having more education, exploring things if it was not because of them. So I know that sometimes we decided to look at the world as being violent, as a lot of bad things happening. But if you think about the past and if you reflect on right now, we actually have a much bigger number of volunteers, a much bigger number of people helping each other nowadays than used to be on the past. So the past was a massive resistance, was pretty much or one religion or no religion, was a lot of power from the government to put in our head specific ideas. This is good or this is bad. Look at this, don't look at that. And we have much more information nowadays. We have access to papers, to books, to things that we didn't have it in the past. So there's actually much more possibilities, but also there's more people trying to do good things in the world. So I guess this is the kind of the final message that Allan Kardec left for us, that without charity, there is no salvation. So he returned to the spiritual world in March 31st of 1869. So we'll be celebrating pretty much his birthday this week. So it's not a coincidence that we have this talk tonight. And he didn't say that we have to follow spiritism. He didn't say that there is no hope without the church or without a specific ritual, culture, or religion. He did say that without charity, there is no salvation. So the main message, I think we can learn a lot from him. It was really hard to actually study him because there was so much. But one of the things that we can reflect on it is that the charity that he actually practiced. So from 50 years old, after that, he studied a lot about spiritism, but he actually dedicated a lot of his time for kids, a lot of the time to help underprivileged kids, but also a lot of the time to compile these books and leave this legacy for us to be reading all over and over many, many years, centuries. And that's amazing. That's just a knowledge that we cannot even imagine to be participating in that, to be part of that. So now we'll finish asking the question, who was Allan Kardec, or who is Allan Kardec for you? What do you think inspired you most about him, about his life, or about his work? And remember, this was like a very, very short summary. Someone speaking in a second language, maybe a bit confusing, but hopefully you understood something that I said tonight. So what do you think was his message, or his most important message or legacy in your life?
For me, because he was so engaging.
Persistent.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of he had to be resilient. He had to go against a lot of professors, a lot of well-recognized people at that age.
I appreciate very much the way he could combine a very high degree of skepticism, also having an open-minded to try to research things that have never been researched before, but in a way that has never been researched before.
Yeah.
So we could combine the scientific skepticism and methodology along with having an open mind. So I think that's brilliant.
Awesome.
I'm grateful for his courage
Yeah.
to bring innovation.
Yeah.
In any field, there is a degree of bravery that you have to have built within, because at times, and he was his example, he will be misunderstood. That friend that you've mentioned, they didn't connect later on. As Allan Kardec progressed with his studies, his friend, and in the book and also in the movie, it exemplifies how that friendship drove him apart. So I think you need to be not just the purpose, but you need to have bravery and courage to embrace your purpose, because it was his choice. He could have walked away. He already had an established name. He already had a profession. He already had income, followers, all of that. He gave up all of that in a way that most of his time was devoted to this new science.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I'm grateful for that, for his passion, for his scientific spirit, really, that didn't let him give up. Just because it was going to get hard, and it did. And he went up until his last breath, working hard for this.
Yeah. So he actually died working. Yeah. It's amazing. Anyone else would like to share something? No? Okay. I will just leave it here. I will just quickly show you what I have. So the summary that I tried to explain, but there's a bit more information here about literally biography. If you want to read just one page, I tried to summarize. And the references kind of that I use, they are listed here, but I will leave you pretty much with the majority of the books. If you want to have a look, we will have a talk just about the spirits books and all the Allan Kardec books. I think is the next talk in April, end of April. I'll leave it with the movie for whoever didn't watch. I wouldn't watch when you're sleepy because it's a dark and lonely movie. I tried to watch with my partner, he slept straight away. Didn't work. And I do like something a bit more contemporary, new. The Surviving Death series on Netflix. I feel like even though it's not about Allan Kardec, it does exemplify a lot of the communication between spirits, and also talk about the research that has been going in many different years and universities all over the world. So they actually show research being made in the past, but also right now. And because it's surviving death is a lot of examples of people almost dying and seeing themselves having some communication with spirits, but also connecting with themselves and learning more about the meaning of life. So if you're a bit more far away from spiritism and think it's a bit too much, or oh, it's a doctrine, is I have to follow something specific, I think you learn a lot from this surviving death series too. Be more about curiosity, but also I think sometimes if the eyes can see something, it's a bit easier to understand instead of reading or imagine how things might work. So thank you for your patience tonight. I hope you come back next week and don't give up of this journey. So I will ask you to try to relax a bit more in your chair. And we are going to finalize this talk with like a meditation moment, prayer moment, whatever you want to call it. So if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes and start having some deep breaths. So breathe in, breathe out. If you can count around 3 seconds each. So imagine that the air that is getting inside your body is full of nutrients, full of oxygen, full of what we need right now. And what you're exhaling, the air that you're exhaling, is full of negativity, toxicity, is full of toxins, worries or problems that you want to leave it outside your body and far away from your spirit. I invite you to focus in violet light, like in a purple light that is on the center of the world. And you imagine this light going all over your body, all over this neighborhood. If you imagine your house, this purple light is spreading all over your house, your work, wherever connections you have. And this light is also going to the most difficult places in the world. Places that people suffering, places that people hungry, places that people sick without any hope. We would like to thank you tonight for our mentors, for our angel guards, or whatever spiritual influence that we have it to be here tonight. Instead of being home, instead of being doing other things, we actually had courage, we had the proactivity, we had the strength to come here tonight for a journey of light, a journey of learning, a journey of charity, a journey of reflection, of critical thinking, and a journey of love. We hope that this work and this message that Allan Kardec has shared with us continue. And we hope that we can spread, that we can increase the awareness that we need love for education, that we need love for healing, for cure, that we need love in our actions, for a better place for all of us to live.